Hello everyone. Thank you for joining our Instagram Live today. It's a pleasure to have you all with us, joining us again, this time for our Instagram Live. And so please invite your friends also to join. We want to have a lot of people, joining us and being blessed by our interview today. And we have another special guest. And so we are very excited to talk to her and get to know her a little bit better. And we also invite you to write your questions or your comments on the chat. And we are also live on Instagram, on YouTube. So you can also join us on YouTube and leave your comment and your questions there. And so we will try to answer them. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Beatriz. I live in São Paulo, Brazil. And I work also with the Alliance World Fellowship, and it has been really a blessing to be part of this worldwide ministry and to serve God in this ministry. And first of all, I want to invite Eunice. She will be also helping me here with the Instagram Live, and she will be helping also with the questions and comments. Hello, Eunice. How are you?
Hello, Beatriz. Hello, everybody. So good to see you all.
Can you just introduce yourself, Eunice?
Yeah, this is Eunice. I'm Eunice. I also work for the Alliance World Fellowship. I work for the Relief and Development Office, assistant to Pastor Yura, and so many other things in the Alliance life. So it's such a nice experience and blessing to be able to contact and connect with you all. So welcome.
Yes, welcome everyone again. And we are really excited to have everyone here with us, joining us, and other people who will also start joining us now. And well, I'm going to invite our today's guest. So let me just invite her, and just a second, and she will join us here. And yes, here she is.
Hello.
Hi, Jen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, we are so excited, and we are really thankful that you accepted our invitation, to talk with us today and tell us a little bit about yourself, about your ministry, and to share a little bit what God has been doing. So welcome, Jen.
Thank you. It's good to be here. It's good to be with you guys.
Yes, that's really wonderful. And so everyone who is watching us, please write your comments or your questions in the chat, and so we can share them, and Jen can answer your questions. Okay, so please, we want you to participate also, and through your comments. Okay, so please don't be shy, and you can ask whatever you want, okay, to Jen, and we really want you to also be part of this. Okay, so Jen, once again, thank you so much for accepting our invitation, and we are really happy that you can join us today. And I want to start by asking you for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, so where you were born, about your family, about your childhood, so that everyone who is watching us can get to know you a little bit better and your background.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm Jen Schepens. I'm currently serving as the director for Envision, which is one of the 4 specialized structures of Alliance missions under the U.S. Alliance, under the Alliance World Fellowship. So I'm on the U.S. side. I'm currently in Colorado, but if you've been tracking any Alliance US news, where our office is in the process of moving to Ohio. But I'm currently in beautiful Colorado, although it's very cloudy today, which is rare. But Colorado has not always been home for me. I was originally born as an Alliance missionary kid. So I was born in Quito, Ecuador, where my parents worked at the Alliance Academy. And I went to school at the Alliance Academy, and we lived there till I was 8. And I like to say I was born and raised in the Alliance, because that was just the context of all of our friends and family friends, and everything I knew was the Alliance missions world, the Alliance church world. So it's fun to full circle be back working for the Alliance, but not what I expected. But I'll get to that part of my story later. But we moved to Nyack, New York, where my parents worked at Nyack College, which is also an Alliance school. And so I was raised mostly in New York. So I like to call myself a New Yorker. I'm a Mets fan. I love all things New York. New York really became home for me. So I usually say that's mostly where I grew up, but Ecuador was a pretty special part of my story, and a very meaningful experience that the Lord has used to shape me, and to currently shape me for what I'm doing now came a lot from having that as like an early childhood experience, being raised as a missionary kid. So went to college in Indiana. I went to Bethel College. I studied business and interior design. My pathway in life was to become an interior designer. I loved the arts. I loved marketing. I loved anything creative. And so it made sense to go to school for business. Again, never expected to be in a ministry role, but throughout all of my high school years, missions was always a huge part of my journey of faith. And it was I was a part of the Alliance, and it's such a heartbeat of the Alliance is to be on mission, and to support missionaries and to go on missions yourself. So that never got lost on me. So I was involved in a lot of short-term missions in college. I did a trip to Hong Kong. And then after college, I did 6 months with Youth with a Mission in Africa. And so that experience really shaped me. And I can talk more about that and how it's influenced even what I'm doing now. But eventually found myself working in marketing after I came back from Africa. And then eventually found myself here working for Envision, which is a story in and of itself, which I could totally share if we want to. But I was first working in marketing, and then I've been now working with Envision for, it will be almost 4 years. Oh, actually, yeah, it'll be 4 years this summer that I've been working with Envision.
Oh, wow, that's really exciting. So you gave us already a lot of information about yourself and your work in just a few minutes. So that's really, a good background. And, I can relate to you because I'm a missionary's kid myself. My parents came from Germany to Brazil. And so I was born here in Brazil. And I still live here, and also in São Paulo, which is also a big city like New York. So I can relate, to your story. And it's really a blessing, to know how God uses us and our profession and our talents and hobbies, for His glory and to serve Him. So, do you have siblings? Tell us a little more about your family. So, and about your parents. You told me before that your parents are on a new adventure again. So tell us a little bit more about this.
Yes. So I have 2 older sisters. I'm the youngest. So all my youngest out there. So 2 older sisters, and currently single. My parents have been working at Nyack College for a while. And then about 2 years ago, they were approached to possibly consider going back overseas as missionaries. So that's what they did. They call it their pre-retirement retirement. So they decided to go back overseas. So I'm now technically, I guess, a missionary kid again, now that my parents are back overseas. My one sister lives here in Colorado Springs, close by me, and my other sister lives in Washington State. here in the US. And I have a dog. Her name is Freddie. She came out of 2020, which was a hard year for us all, but I always say she was the best part of what came out of 2020 for me. And so she's my baby. I'm a dog mom for sure. So I have no kids of my own, but I do have a puppy.
Oh, okay. That's great. And so everyone who's watching, you can tell us where you're from. I see here we have someone also from São Paulo, Brazil. And so tell us where you're from, and if you have any comments or questions during our conversation here, please write them here in the comments field. Also on YouTube, okay, we are live on YouTube as well, so you can also share the link with your friends and invite everyone to watch our live stream. And Jen, tell me, when did you accepted the Lord Jesus as your own Lord and Savior? So do you remember? Because usually sometimes people think, oh, because you're a missionary's kid, a pastor's kid, or you were like born in the church, automatically you are a Christian or a disciple of Jesus Christ. And well, that's not true. Everyone has to make their own decision to follow Christ. So when did this happen to you, and when did you decide really to follow Christ and to give your life to him?
Yeah, that's a great question, because you're right. It is sometimes an assumption that if you're raised in the church, but it was at an very early age. My parents definitely raised us to follow Jesus from a young age. I took that very seriously as a little kid. Some of it being raised on the mission field, we got to travel with them when they would speak at churches or go to the villages or speak at school. And then the Alliance Academy being a Christian school, there was a lot of context for me to be raised in faith. I think it wasn't until really probably middle school, though, when I lived in New York. I was very active with a youth group, and I had a fantastic youth leader who I think became, it started to become really real for me that I needed to make my own decision for myself to figure out how faith was going to go with me in the future as I grew up. And that's really where the context in which I feel like I established a true relationship with Jesus was probably at that point. I also was, I think, really sorting through what faith did look like for me. So not only just trusting those that had led me up until that point, but also what was my own experience. And so I remember that was, those were the first times where I would read the Bible, like on my own decision to read the Bible, or in worship, feeling like I could sense the presence of God for the first time for myself. And so that ownership was really important to me in middle school. In high school, I started diving into parts of my story that were really painful that I had not processed before. And the Lord at that point really was my rock of the only thing that was really stable and safe, and really got me to kind of where I am today, honestly, in being able to process the hard things of life. And so that was a turning point for me. And one of those things being, what do I want to do with my life? And I think it was in high school when I really decided that, like, I was going to follow Jesus, no matter if it was hard or not. And that's really when it became real for me.
Oh, yes. And Eunice, I think we already have a question here. Can you?
Yeah, we have a question from Ellie. She's asking, what is the most encouraging thing that you've seen through your role with Envision? Anything that has strengthened your faith?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I feel like one of the most encouraging things, and honestly, the thing that makes me say, I can't believe I get to do this as a job, is when we get to interact with our interns, our short-term interns that come either for intern training, or we interact with them when I go and visit a field or visit our staff, and I get to interact with an intern on the ground, and they're processing some real stuff, like kind of the stuff that I just mentioned that I processed at some point in my journey of faith. Is where's God leading me? How has God shaped me? What am I going to do with my life? So I feel super honored to be a part of people's journeys and people's stories when they're wrestling with those very same things. So getting to sit down in a living room or sit here in Colorado Springs at our intern training, but get to ask those questions of where do you feel like God is leading you, and what is God doing in your soul or in your heart, and for them to trust us, like trust me and my Envision staff with that moment in their journey. And we always tell our interns, we only get them for a snapshot. Like their journey has already been happening before they come to Envision, and then their journey will continue after they leave their time with Envision. And we get to have them for that period of time, and that's so meaningful. And when somebody gets to trust you with a small snapshot of their story, and then you can help hear from the Lord for them, or get to walk with them and really ask them good questions, or help them figure out what is next for them. That's why I love doing what I'm doing.
Yes, that's wonderful. And Jen, talking a little bit more about this, how did you know that God called you to do what you do? How did you know, or when did you know, and exactly, that God called you exactly to do what you're doing today?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because I wouldn't have expected this at all. So if you had asked me 6 years ago, 7 years ago, you're going to be working with Envision, you're going to be directing Envision, I probably would have just laughed. It was not on my radar at all that's what I was going to be doing, that I was going to be doing this. I knew components of what I love to do. So I knew how God wired me, or what I was interested in. So I was working in marketing. I said that at some point in that journey, I ended up coming actually to a leadership summit that Envision put on in Paris. And part of the reason why I took that trip and go to that conference was because I felt like there was a stirring in my soul that I was going to be maybe making a transition, that God was going to be providing what was next for me in my life. So I went to that conference really looking at what do I need to be looking for? I don't know, I don't know what this means. And felt like after that conference, the Lord made it very clear that I was to transition from my job, again, with no idea what was next. And so it was like kind of all these little pieces of saying yes to exactly what was next, but maybe not knowing the full plan that was coming. And so I said yes to transitioning out of my job. And at the time I was living on my own. So I moved back in with my parents, still having no idea. And then about a couple days before the school semester started, I got a call from the dean at Alliance Theological Seminary. And we had a great conversation on the phone about what it looked like for me to possibly consider going to seminary. Again, seminary was not at all on my radar for what I thought I would be doing. Like I said, my background's more in the arts or in artistic realm, not in the theological realm. I never considered being a pastor or necessarily working in ministry in that regard. So I went to my first class, which was divine healing. And I think I might have cried my way the whole class, because it just was one of those moments where you're exactly where you need to be, and that God placed you there for a particular reason. And so again, I didn't have the whole plan in front of me of what was I going to do after seminary, but I did feel like the Lord said, just be very present in what I'm doing in you right now. And so I did that for 3 solid years. I was a full-time student. And it wasn't until my last semester of seminary when I got connected to Envision again, and this job emerged for Envision, working as an operations person for Envision. And that's really when I felt like a sense that a lot of threads of my life were coming together to match what Envision does, and the mission that they're on, and the connection with the Alliance, and all of those pieces started to make sense for me as to what what I needed to do and where I needed to be next, and it was with Envision. And then fast forward about 15 months later, the director transitioned from Envision, and this role opened up. And again, it was one of those things that I did not expect, but just felt like I had to keep on saying yes to that next thing that God was placing in front of me.
Yes. And which advice would you give to people who are, in this, maybe in the same process you were a few years ago, in this transition process, maybe from university to the professional life, or maybe they want to also be involved full-time in the church ministry. So what would you say to them? What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I would say it's okay not to know everything, not to know the full plan, or have all of it mapped out before you say yes to something. I think that's what I've learned, is that you sometimes say yes, and it's purely out of trust in the Lord and obedience to the Lord, or trust in even people that are around you that are helping you discern what is next. But sometimes we don't have the full plan of how this makes sense, or why does this connect to my story, or how does this connect to even the future. And so sometimes it's just taking the risk to say yes. But I fully acknowledge that that's not an easy thing sometimes. That can be really scary. It can be really scary, and it's really risky. And so I think there's what I would recommend too is just trusting that as that yes unfolds, you gain a deeper intimacy with Jesus. You gain intimacy with the relationships that are walking with you in that journey, your family, your friends.
Yes.
And that is so valuable to it adds such a richness to your life. If you can open-handedly hold that yes in your hand and just say, okay, I'm just going to let it unfold, and I'm going to trust the people around me and trust the Lord, and allow that to actually deepen your relationships and deepen your intimacy with Jesus. But again, I understand it's so not easy sometimes, because it can be really scary.
Yes, that's right. It can be scary and it's not easy, but when you are sure that this is really what God wants from you, and the Holy Spirit really confirms that and guides you, and also usually other people, like you said, family or other friends from church and leaders, they can confirm this, that you are taking the right step, and so you feel really, fulfilled, by doing God's right. will, even if it's difficult, even maybe sometimes it involves a lot of sacrifice, but it's worth it,
Oh,
really,
absolutely.
Yeah, totally, right? You agree?
Oh, absolutely. And those moments where it does feel worth it is when you look back and you see how faithful the Lord has been to walking with you in each of those seasons. And the painful seasons have been worth it. The joyful seasons have inspired the future. And then you start to see how much you couldn't have planned it. And I couldn't have gotten myself to where I am today. I don't have that type of imagination for myself, but the Lord does. And he's incredibly faithful to journey with you in that.
Yes, that's right, and he does much more than we can even imagine or dream of, like
exactly.
So yeah, exactly. So it's really wonderful. And Jen, I was thinking about I see many people, especially young people who are starting, their college life or their professional life, and they think it's really disconnected, from your Christian life or your church life, and it's not, your whole life you need to live it for Christ, and it doesn't matter if it's in your school or in your job or in the church. Everything You know, you need to live and for the glory of God. But what I want to ask you is, sometimes people don't think that like what they studied or their talents or maybe even their hobbies, that God can use this for his kingdom, you know, or for people to serve him. So like you told us that you have this marketing and artistic background, and how does God use this background, your background, you know, in your work and for his kingdom? So what can you tell to young people who are struggling with this, you know, really how this relates with their Christian life, and how God really wants to use our life as a whole, and not like split in different departments, you know, if you understand what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And we find that all the time with our short-term interns is they come in and they have an expectation of what missions should look like or what ministry should look like. And I love it when they're surprised that it looks different than they expected, because it's true. I think missions is changing as well. The world is changing, and with that, I think how God is moving is different than it maybe looked in the past. And so at this point, I continue to be surprised at what unique gifts or hobbies or skill sets are being used right now, particularly in missions. We've run into a bunch of people in just partners or work that overlaps with us, and they're doing woodworking, or they're doing architecture, plumbing, engineering, and it's all for missions. It's all for reaching people with the gospel. And there's absolutely no end point to God's imagination in how he can use you. I think it's our own human limitations, and sometimes our organization's limitations on how God could use somebody. And so how I've seen that even in my own life has been kind of going back to just saying yes and trusting. And so I've pursued intentionally in my life to just say that next yes thing. And sometimes it was to develop myself in certain areas, and then being like, I have no idea how this will be useful in the kingdom. So like my interior design, for instance, when I didn't go into interior design as a profession, it was always confusing to me. Why did I study that? Why did I invested a lot of time and energy in that, and I loved it. It was so much fun. So it's very much how I was wired. Well, now fast forward, 7-8 years from when I studied it, I looked at kind of what we're doing within Envision, and we get to create environments for people. And that's literally what interior design is creating environments for people. Now it looks completely different. I'm not arranging furniture or picking fabrics or paint colors and stuff like that, but I get to help shape the environment that somebody gets to enter into. And from an organizational aspect, I get to shape environments. And so it's been those small things that have been like, oh, I can totally see how my training in this has impacted how I operate as a leader doing this over here. And I don't know if I would have ever been able to connect that dot. So I would say, like, go full force into developing yourself as a young leader or as a young person. Pursue the things that do bring you energy and make you passionate. And God can absolutely use those. And if there's not a direct correlation, so another thing I love to do is pottery. Well, pottery now has become something that's energizing for me, and I use as a restorative tool, because I'm in ministry and I'm working hard in this and outputting a lot. I now have a hobby that gets to be restorative, and I get to connect to the Lord through it. And so there's nothing wasted in the kingdom of God. And so maybe you won't use it directly, but maybe it still will help you become a passionate person and a person that can develop all those specific skills and giftings, because you're really uniquely wired. And we need people like that. We need each other. because how I'm wired is not how Eunice is wired, is not how Beatrice is wired. But we need each other in order to do this together. And so that's what I would say as far as developing kind of your hobbies and skill sets, and really press into how you're uniquely wired.
Yes, exactly. And how every person that God has created is really unique and has unique talents and gifts given by God, and He wants us to use everything we have and everything we are to His glory, right? Right. But Jen, I want to go back a little bit and to ask you, for the people who don't know, what is Envision?
Sure. Yeah, so Envision is under the Alliance Missions umbrella in the U.S. Alliance. So we have 4 specialized structures, and Envision is one of those. So our mission within Alliance Missions is to identify and develop missional leaders, and we do this through short-term missions opportunities and innovative ministry strategies. So a heart to why we do what we do and what we're trying to do is we're trying to develop leaders. That's a main one. We don't think that Kingdom Impact is just today. We want it to see it in the future, and a future for Kingdom Impact is making sure that leaders are developed and leaders are sent on mission. And so how can we create spaces where they get to be developed? It's a huge priority for us to also do short-term missions well. So short-term missions has a wide variety of history and impact in communities, and sometimes those aren't great. And so in Envision, we try to do short-term missions well, and we try to pair short-term missions with long-term missions. So all of our short-term missions is connected to Alliance work around the world, and is connected to Alliance World Fellowship churches around the world, so that it's connected to the bigger long-term strategy. And then we get to use short-term missions as a way to develop people, connect churches, and partnership with fields of what's happening overseas and what's happening globally to the church. And that's the last thing that's important to us, is really making those connections and partnerships, mobilizing the church, mobilizing young people, mobilizing leaders into mission. And so if we can be a resource for that, if we can provide an ease of logistics so that a church partner can partner with what's happening globally, particularly in our Alliance churches here in the U.S., we want to see the Alliance Church mobilized. And so we aim to provide an experience where that can happen. So that's the heart of what we do. We want to see leaders raised up, and we want to see the church mobilized on mission.
Oh, yes. And can anyone participate, or is there only a certain age, or I don't know, a certain nationality, or is it,
Sure.
Is this open for everyone? And another question is, usually how long are these short-term mission trips?
Yeah, great question. So we do everything from a 7-day team trip all the way up to 2 years and sometimes 3 years. And all of those are developmental, and all of those are mobilizing people short term into mission with the hope that they would capture a vision and confirm a calling to go long term in ministry and mission. We like to say our age range is anywhere from a 13-year-old could be the youngest on a team trip, all the way up to 90 or death. I mean, our oldest intern has been in his 90s, in his wow. Actually, I think he was in his 80s. He's now in his 90s, but there's no age limit. We have a program called Give Back, which is for retirees and professionals to mobilize how they can use their experience to give back to what's happening missionally. Our internships are primarily 18 to 23, but we've had a wide range of people go on an internship, or our residency program is our 2-year program, which is highly developmental. It's meant to prepare people for long-term service. But again, have seen people from all walks of life, steps and stages, that need a concentrated space where they feel like they want to dedicate that time and space to figure out what the Lord is doing in their lives. And so we have 23 sites around the world that have long-term Envision staff there ready to host and disciple and develop people that come and join us. We primarily send U.S. citizens from the U.S. Alliance Church or outside of the Alliance Church, but we have started conversations with other Alliance World Fellowship partners to see how they can start possibly something like Envision in their national church, and is a conversation we love to have to share what we've learned, but also to see how we could partner globally. So I feel like there's lots of opportunities still there to partner globally with Alliance World Fellowship around the world. And then all of our Envision sites are connected to what's happening in that country. And so when we're connected to the National Alliance Church there, we love to be good partners, and we want to help resource the Alliance Church that's there on the ground in any way we can. So we like to partner. It's a heartbeat of ours and a high value of ours.
Yes. So if someone wants to be part of this or be part of an intern or be part of a mission trip, how can they contact Envision, or how can they apply?
Yeah. So the best way is probably to go to our website. We are envision.com. You can follow us on social media. I'm joined by our social media, so follow us on all of our social media platforms. There's the link to the website right on our social media. And then on our website, there's the links to apply. If you're not sure how to participate, or you don't know what program is the right fit, there's an inquiry button on there, and that just gets you in touch with somebody from our office who would love to talk to you about what the best program is, how you can participate. If you're a church and you'd like to take a team trip, there's the inquiry on the website or the application right on the website, and you can get your church partnered. If you don't know where you want to go or what experience you'd like to have, we can get you connected to our site leaders around the world, and figure out how we compare, how you're wired, what you're interested in, what you're looking for, and see if we can find a fit for you in our Envision sites around the world.
That's really wonderful. And I just want to remind everyone who is watching us, please feel free to write your comment or to your questions to Jen. Okay, so we also want you to participate and to ask the questions you have, or maybe share a word of encouragement. And so please feel free to use also the comment, to add a comment here on our Instagram or on our YouTube channel. And well, Jen, how would you encourage other young people to be part of what God is doing where they are? You know, everyone has their own story, their own background, their own place. And so how would you encourage, especially young people, because we are talking about this ministry and about yourself, and you are also very, very young. So if they want to be part of what God is doing, exactly where they are, what would you say to them? How would you encourage these young people?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the one thing I would say is, we were just talking about this today, actually, in our staff meeting, is the concept of each of us have our own circle of influence. The people that we are connected to or interact with can be so unique to us. So for example, I go to a gym or I take this art class. Those people I have impact and influence on because I'm directly connected to them. So what I would say to anybody who wants to get involved in their community or impact their community is just look at who you're connected to. What are the things that are available to you that you can influence on? And then I would say there needs to be a high intentionality. If we just wait for things to happen, sometimes we won't get anywhere. And so when it comes to sharing the gospel, when it comes to finding ways to serve, sometimes we have to take the first step. And it kind of goes back to what we have been talking about. Sometimes that's risky to take the first step or to initiate a conversation with somebody. or maybe we're in a grocery store or the library or your gym. And maybe you're the one that needs to say something first to somebody. But I think we might be surprised at how people respond and how people are just craving connection and craving relationships with people. And what I've found is if I can just make the first step or make the connection, most likely they come right back at wanting the same type of connection. And I've found myself in deep conversation that I did not expect to have, but it's because I took a risk to make a connection. So I'd say try that and make connections with people around you. And then there's lots of opportunity. There's needs within your own community. And sometimes it's just being connected to the right organizations or the right person. So start asking questions to those that are around you. What does this community need? Or how can I be involved? Or do you know of an organization that does X, Y, or Z? And if you're particularly interested in something, do some research online and figure out, are there organizations or churches that are doing it already, and join them. Go and volunteer for a day and see if there's ways that you can plug in. But most likely there's something happening that you can be involved in. Sometimes it can be a bit intimidating thinking about starting something, or maybe you have to start your own ministry, and sometimes it's just starting with what's already available. As far as what's already happening in your community. But again, it takes a little bit of risk to take the first step, to either do research or make the connection or initiate a conversation with somebody. But look right where you are. What's your area of influence? Who are the people that are around you?
Yes. And Jenna, according to your experience, what do you think are some of the challenges you face in your ministry, or we face at the church in general, to get young people involved, not only in the ministry, but really involved in the Christian life and in the kingdom of God? So what do you think are those challenges?
Yeah, I think a big challenge is this next generation. So Gen Z or Gen Alpha is what they call it in the US. They're a totally different group of people. And so one of the challenges is that sometimes we need to look at reaching young people or having young people involved in our churches or in our ministries, really as a cross-cultural experience. So I'm not much older than a Gen Z person, but sometimes we're not connecting on the same page because their experience has been so different, and they're in a different generation with a totally different upbringing than even my generation. And I'm not that much older than them. So I think the challenge is sometimes we need to view it as a cross-cultural mission for the church. So that requires us changing the way we reach out to young people. It requires us to look at how we do things on a Sunday morning or in church in general. Are we willing to change the way we do things so that it speaks in the language in which that generation speaks? And I don't mean actual language, but just in their cultural lens. And I think that's so valid to how Jesus did ministry. He was very cross-cultural, and he spoke to people in a way that they could hear the gospel and hear the transformation that was available to them. And so we, as people that are seeking to have young people come to our churches or come to our ministries, we need to do the hard work to translate so that they can hear it in their language and hear it in their culture where they can resonate with it. But it takes some work to do that, and we won't get it right all the time. And so it's just being willing to take the risk in that, and being able to do the hard work.
Yes, and I think you said something that's very important, is that Jesus did that. He really talked to people in a way they could relate to or they could understand. and not like as this religious, leader, or and in a difficult language. And what I see today is that many of these young people, they don't even go to church, so and churches, many churches, I don't say all of them, but many churches, they do programs for inside people, only for people that go to church.
Right.
And so what you said is very important, that we need to reach out to these people who don't even go to church and don't want to go to church. It's not because, they don't go because, some other reason, but sometimes they don't want to, or they never went to a church, so they don't even know what this is like, or have some prejudice against, or some bad experience. Right. And so I think that you said a very important thing, that we need to be more like Jesus. He wasn't in the temple all the time. He was on the street with the common people, and really was talking to them, and they really felt, this love coming from him, and in his words and everything he did, and when he healed people. And so I think this is what we and the church in general needs to do more. We need to go outside our walls,
right,
and reach out to people. Do you agree?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I just heard a story actually the other day where somebody we were connected to was driving in a car with a friend of his, and they passed a church, and the guy said, "What's that?" And I'm like, our staff person was like, "What? That's a church." And
so like, which world do you live? You don't know what a church is, right?
Right. But I mean, and that may be a more dramatic example, but that's so true. It's we need to step back from what we expect them to already know, and realize they may not know anything about church or about Jesus, and to meet them where they're at, and to say it in a way that they can understand it, and to also live it ourselves. I think this next generation is really key on authentic living, and genuine relationship. And so if you're living it out truly, they'll be curious about it. They'll be curious, how is Jesus transforming your life, or how do you deal with anxiety? And so when you're honest about how you're processing and how you're journeying with Jesus and modeling that, they'll be able to see Jesus in what and how you live your life. And I think that also will be something that's going to be key for this next generation, to then see it in you, and then be able to see it in the church. Because of bad experience or no experience, they'll see Jesus first in you, and then they'll see Jesus in the church. They won't necessarily see Jesus in the church first. And we can bring people into that. And that's the exciting work of us being able to go out to them, and then bring them as a part of meaningful member, part of the church.
Yes, that's right. Well, Jen, I'm really loving our conversation here and everything you're sharing. And well, we will finish in a few minutes. But before we finish, I want to ask you, so what are some of your dreams, or what do you really, let's use this envision, what do you envision, for the future of the ministry and the church, and especially for young people? So share a little bit about this.
Yeah, so we're in an interesting time, both as Envision, but I think just in general in the Alliance, of what's going to be the future. I think things are changing so rapidly. If 2020 showed us anything, things can change overnight, almost literally, going from completely open to completely shut down. But just even the impact of what's happening in our world right now. And so a lot of the dreams that we're having within Envision, and myself, is really, how can we stay flexible and and agile to how the world is changing, and then how can we respond in that. So I think taking a hard look at how we do missions, and how do we develop people to be on mission, is something that we need to constantly be working at and looking at how we're doing that and doing that well. And then I think also how can we partner together and do this together? So something that we dream a lot about is what are ways that we don't have to recreate the wheel, or how can we utilize the gifts that are over here and the resources over here, and then how can we share our resources and do this together? That's part of why Alliance World Fellowship is such a meaningful expression of the Alliance family, because it really is the epitome of us let's do this together as an Alliance family. So something we dream about is just what are ways that we can do that better. And then as Envision sites, we look at how we can be good partners within Alliance missions, and do that together. But we really want to see people transformed by Jesus. I dream about that people would come and serve with Envision and capture a calling to go missionally, but also have an experience with Jesus that transforms them. Ultimately, that's going to be key to them being on mission, is if they're transformed themselves by Jesus. And then they want to see other people transformed by Jesus. So that's what we dream about. How we're doing that, we're looking at starting new Envision sites. So we're starting Berlin this year. We just commissioned and appointed 10 new Envision workers at our national gathering last week in Nashville. So we're seeing people being launched to Japan this year for the first time. Just super excited to start new work within Envision, as well as partner with what Alliance Missions is doing. And then in Alliance Missions, we've been talking a lot about what are those hard places that are completely unreached by the gospel. And so something for Envision that's super exciting for me right now is something that we're pursuing that might not be regionally based sites, but more people group oriented sites. So we pioneered a ministry to the deaf and hard of hearing, because they're one of the most unreached people groups, but they're scattered around the world globally, a deaf and hard of hearing community. And so what are the other people group communities like that are completely unreached by the gospel, and how can we be innovative in how we might be able to reach them?
Yes, oh, that's so wonderful. And we really pray that God will bless your ministry and will bless Envision and the Alliance as a family, and that more people want to get involved also in God's work and God's kingdom. And Eunice, do we have any other questions or comments before we finish?
Well, Michi is saying God bless you. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it right. And there were people like, I guess, Kat, she was also saying hi, and Kim, I believe it might be your contact. When you were talking about, the generations, he was like, oh, good word. So that was really meaningful, though.
Awesome.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yes, Jen, it's been really wonderful, and thank you so much for everything you shared. And I hope that everyone also who is watching us or will maybe watch later will also be blessed by everything God has been doing.
Thank you.
In Jen's life and through her life also. And if you want to know more about the Alliance World Fellowship, and our Global Alliance family, so please, you can follow us on social media. So Alliance World Fellowship is on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn. So we are almost everywhere. And you can also subscribe to our newsletter, so you can receive news from all over the world from the Alliance family, and also prayer requests. So on our website, there is a button where you can click on subscribe to our newsletter, so you can also then receive information and prayer requests. So we want to invite everyone also to follow us and to be more involved also in the Alliance World Fellowship ministry. And we want to bless also everyone through our ministry and what God has been doing within the Alliance. So Jen, thank you again very much for your time. And maybe we hope to see you again, and maybe sometime in the future we can talk again. And you can share more things and about you and about your ministry. And we just want to say again, thank you so much, and God bless you very, very much.
Thank you. It was great to be with you guys, and great for everyone watching and that will watch. It's just been, great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. So everyone, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. So I think in July we will have another Instagram live, so stay tuned on our social media, and we will always share all the news, and you can be part of this and also participate. Thank you, everyone. And have a good night, good day, good afternoon, or whatever, what time it is in your place or your country. So Jen, thank you again so much, and God bless you.
Thank you so much.
God bless everyone. Thank you everyone for joining us. Bye bye.
See ya.
Thank you, Jen.